No one even looked at her, not really, beneath the relentless heat of twin suns and the acrid sting of recycled air. The slave market at Zen's edge buzzed with life and cruelty. The Andromeda trade route artery of the civilized galaxy pulsed through here with all the charm of a clogged vein, rich with traffic poisoned by profit giant banners, flickered with holographic ads for docile companions, battle-ready brutes, and pure-line entertainers all. Promising obedience with a smiling face, Sir stood in. Silence, wrapped in the stench of sweat machine oil, and panicked. The auction platform beneath her vibrated slightly with each shift of the crowd. A dozen species were up for display, furred, scaled, feathered, some humanoid. Some not traders moved to them like farmers at a meat stall, scanning neural tags and checking teeth. Most didn't even stop to look at her. Those who did didn't linger. Too thin, too quiet skin, too strange green, like jade glinting under moonlight, with faint lines of bioluminescence flickering along her collarbone and wrist, pulsing in soft waves, like breathing. Her eyes were a pale opalescent gold, always half lowered, avoiding contact. She stood motionless, with her hands clasped in front of her, not submissive, not defying, just fated. The seller was growing desperate, a barrel-chested ORD Daxian with cybernetic arms and a shock baton dangling from his belt. He barked with tired aggression. Rare species, strong mental resistance, cleans up nice, no prior ownership, lies, all of it. He didn't know what she was. No one did, not really. He couldn't even pronounce the name of her home world properly, because it had been burned out of charts nearly a decade ago. A Talor. Merchant Glankaway then snorted. Looks defective, malnourished you. Scan her for cognitive lag. Clean slate. The seller insisted docile and undamaged. A passing trayer in silk-trimmed armor paws leaned close, then wrinkled his nose. What's that smell? Of motion suppression drugs. Wearing off. The seller muttered, stepping between them with a strange smile. Easy fix. Sir didn't react, not to the stares, the whispers, or the evaluations, not even when a mech drone hovered down, a flash of light in her eyes. She barely breathed. It was easier that way. The noise, the heat, the stink, it all blurred together. But her mind, buried beneath a decade of conditioning, still slipped sideways. Sometimes cracked blue skies, hands warm on her face, laughter, running water, memory dream, or just fragments of the brain conjured to stay sane free. The seller suddenly bellowed, throwing his arms in the air. I'm serious. Just take her off my hand. She's taking up display. Space buyers chuckled and moved on, even in a place where life was sold by the kilo. She was worth nothing. And then someone stopped Sir and noticed him first by the shift and pressure. The energy around her changed, not tense, not leering, just still. She slowly lifted her gaze. He was human. Of all the species, she had learned to fear that. One she knew least, and yet instinctively. Trusted least of all humans, had a reputation in the outer systems, reckless, emotional, violent. When cornered and new to the galactic stage, to understand their place, too stubborn to accept it. And yet, he did look like a conqueror. Dust clung to folds of his jacket. His boots were worn, crusted with reddish grit from the surrounding moons. His eyes, a shade of gray that caught the fading sunlight like iron, catching a spark, didn't scan or judge. They just held her quietly without pity sheed. Forgotten what it felt like to be looked at like that. The seller perked up suddenly. Energized. You want her. I mean it. She's yours. Free, free, free. No tag fees, no vet scans, no trouble. She's weird, doesn't talk, doesn't much, kind of creepy. If I'm honest, the man didn't respond right away. Then calmly, he said, she's not creepy. She looks like someone who's never been treated like a person. The seller blinked. Look, buddy, you want to hand out charity? There's an orphan booth down in the second ring. I'll take. Her, the man said, voice low, but firm transfer. Ownership, no tracker. I don't want anyone claiming salvage later. The seller hesitated. You sure? Yet paperwork was transferred onto a data chip. The man signed with a thumbprint, and Rianol scanned. The seller shoved the chain into his hand with visible relief, as if he just unloaded a cursed relic. And that was it, legally, physically, completely. She was his. He didn't tug the chain. He didn't grab her arm. He simply looked at her and said, you can walk. So she did. The crowd parted slightly as they left, a subtle ripple of unease passing to the nearby buyers. No one tried to stop them. No one cared enough to question why he'd taken her. He didn't speak again until they reached the edge of the market. The shuttleport buzzed in the distance, loud engines rising into orbit, carrying cargo and corpses alike too. Scattered corners of the stars. But he turned away from the port and walked toward the outskirts, toward the hills. I'm Oscar, he said after a while, not looking back. Sir said nothing. They reached a small house built into a cliffside. Old tech, manual locks, real wood beams reinforced with steel. Vines had begun to reclaim parts of the roof. A solar turbine hummed softly in the wind. It wasn't fortified. It wasn't rich. It was home. She hesitated at the door. He opened it and stepped aside. You can come in if you want. Inside, the air was cool. There was a faint scent of spice, soap, and machine oil. He didn't lead her to a cage. He didn't point to a mat on the floor. Instead, he showed her a room, blankets, clean clothes, a water basin. "I made stew," he said almost awkwardly. "If you eat. If not, that's fine too." Sir sat on the edge of the bed, still expecting the pain to come, still waiting for the trick, the command, the punishment. But nothing came. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat upright, listening for footsteps, for locks, for anything that made the illusion crack. Nothing. The next morning, food appeared again, fresh, spiced with something warm and earthy. He didn't speak much, but when he passed her, he always moved slowly, deliberately, giving her space. By the third day, the silence had changed. It no longer felt like waiting. When he returned that evening, he had something in his hand, small, delicate flowers with pale violet petals and tiny yellow cores, wild, not bought. "These reminded me of your eyes," he said, placing a glass beside her bed. She stared at them. He didn't ask her to like them, didn't expect gratitude. He just set them there and moved on like it was normal, but it wasn't. Her eyes stung. Her chest ached. She didn't know why. Tears came slowly, soundlessly, confusing, unwelcome, uncontrollable. He found her like that an hour later. He didn't flinch, didn't try to stop her. He just sat beside the bed, not touching her, just near enough to feel real. "You don't owe me anything," Oscar said, his voice quiet and steady. "You're not here to serve. You're here because no one else saw you. And I did." Her throat locked. The words she wanted to say, whatever they were buried deep under layers of silence and fear and memory. But the tightness in her chest loosened just a little. It hurt in a different way. Not like pain. Like healing. Like something old and broken had begun, without permission, to stitch itself back together. Sura still didn't understand him. She didn't know what humans were supposed to be. But this one didn't treat kindness like currency. And that made him dangerous. And maybe, just maybe, worth trusting. For now, the warning came with the air long before the clouds rolled in, or the sirens sounded from the lower ridges. Sir felt it, a shift in pressure, a tingling at the base of her spine. Her skin reacted before her mind could catch up, bioluminescent threads along her arms flickering in slow, uneasy pulses. Oscar had left the main hatch open while working on the external generator. He was halfway through adjusting the cooling fans when she stepped out silently onto the front step. He looked up at the sky. "You feel it too, huh?" She didn't respond. Her eyes were locked on the horizon. The hills in the distance were swallowed by a dark, low mass of storm clouds, heavy with static. Twin bolts of lightning cracked across the upper atmosphere, electric violet and unnatural. Oscar stood up and wiped his hands on his shirt. Plasma storm. Probably a nasty one by the look of it. Sura stepped backward, her heel brushing the threshold. Her breath was uneven, chest rising too fast. The wind picked up, laced with a sharp scent of charged particles and old metal. She knew that smell, that sound. She remembered the last time. Not a dream, not a vision. Memory. The rattling of a steel cage bolted to the side of a slaver ship. The groaning of engines straining through turbulence. The storm hitting harder than forecasted. And then blackout. The power failed. The sedatives wore off too fast. The lights flickered. Screams rose through the darkness like sirens underwater. One of the guards slipped on the deck and hit his head. Another fired his weapon blindly into the cages. They didn't understand what storms did to her kind. Oscar noticed the way she stiffened, the way her pupils widened and her breath shortened. He set the wrench down. "Hey," he said gently. "Come inside." She didn't move. "Storm's going to hit hard. I've got a reinforced shelter below the house. We'll be fine, but you need to come with me." Still nothing. Her body remained frozen in that old memory, her mind replaying what it had learned too well. When lightning struck, pain followed. Always. Oscar didn't touch her, didn't push. Instead, he walked past her and pulled open the trapdoor at the side of the house. "I'm going down now," he said, voice even. "It's not locked. You can come if you want." Then he disappeared down into the shelter, leaving the hatch open behind him. Seconds passed. Then a minute. Then another. When the first blast of thunder shook the sky, Sura bolted inside. She didn't think. She just moved. Feet pounding down the stairs into the dim metallic chamber, where Oscar had already lit a lantern and set out 2 blankets on the floor. She pressed herself into the farthest corner of the shelter and sank to her knees, arms wrapped tightly around her chest. The walls vibrated with the storm's arrival. Outside, wind clawed the roof. The sound of it, a deep, low roar, was too familiar. Oscar sat across from her, calm but watchful. He said nothing, no questions, no commentary. After a few minutes, he leaned his head back against the wall and started talking. Not to her exactly, just into the space. First storm I ever saw was on Noah's 4. Open skies, flat land. The lightning moved like it was hunting something. It took out our cow systems, burned half our crops, and knocked the cargo hauler out of the air. His voice was steady, grounding. Sir kept her head down, but she was listening. I was 10, he continued. My brother thought it was exciting. I thought it was the end of the world. Spent the whole night curled up in the grain silo. I didn't sleep for 2 days after. He paused. Then, you ever get that? Like your body remembers before your brain catches up? Sir finally looked at him, slowly, warily. Yes, she said. 1 word. But it was enough. He nodded once. Makes sense. The storm surged again and the lights flickered. The shelter shuddered with the impact. Sura flinched hard, her hands gripping the edge of the cot, her breathing ragged. Oscar stood up and moved, but not toward her. He grabbed a folded tarp from the corner and spread it near her feet, then sat down beside it, leaving a clear space between them. I'll stay here, he said, in case you need me. She stared at him, not with fear now, but confusion and something like disbelief. He didn't demand her trust. He didn't touch her. He simply stayed. Time passed. The worst of the storm screamed overhead. But inside, the shelter felt different now. The air was still tight, but not suffocating. Oscar had filled it with presence, not pressure. Eventually, Sir's posture loosened. She sat back, no longer curled in on herself. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but clear. We were trained to feel everything, every current of emotion, every shift in tone or thought. It made us good healers, good memory bearers. But when storms came, we couldn't block anything out. Oscar didn't interrupt. We panicked, overload. Some of us broke. He looked at her gently. But you didn't. No, she said. Not completely. Then she whispered, but I'm tired of surviving. Oscar's voice softened. Then maybe it's time to live. Silence again, but this one didn't hurt. It wrapped around them like a sheer blanket. After a while, she asked, Why do you live alone, Oscar? He gave her a sad smile. Because when I was with people, I was always trying to fix what I couldn't save. And now I fix what's in front of me. So looked down at her hands. The faint green glow from her skin had dimmed. Her fingers didn't tremble anymore. I'm not something broken, she said, almost like a warning. Oscar met her gaze. I know. That's why I'm still here. Thunder cracked, and for the first time in years, she didn't flinch. The storm passed just before dawn. When they climbed out of the shelter, the air was wet and heavy, but the sun was already burning through the clouds. Sir turned her face to the sky. She didn't smile, but she didn't hide either. Oscar offered her a cup of hot water. She took it. Something had changed. Not fixed, not solved, but changed. And for the first time, Sir realized she might not have to face the galaxy alone. Oscar was humming again, a low, tuneless melody, barely more than a breath, drifting from the corner of the workshop where he crouched over a busted power cell. His sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, grease smudged across his forearm. Sir stood at the threshold, watching silently. She'd started doing that more often lately, not hiding, not quite participating, just being present. The storm had passed 2 days ago, but its aftermath lingered in her. The kind of silence that came after surviving something you weren't sure you'd live through. But he never brought it up, never mentioned her shaking hands, her breathless panic in the shelter, or the way she'd whispered safe like it was a foreign word. He didn't even glance up when he spoke. "Can you hand me that circuit clamp?" "The small one. Green handle." Sir's eyes flicked to the table. She picked it up and held it out without a word. He took it gently, brushing her fingers by accident. She didn't flinch. Progress. "Thanks," he said, then returned to working. After a while, he added, "You're good at this. Most people don't even know how to hold a tool like that, let alone pick the right one on sight." She hesitated, then sat on the edge of a nearby crate, legs pulled in. "I used to help maintain memory cores," she said softly. "Delicate work. Precision mattered." Oscar looked up, brow lifted. "Memory cores? As in AI systems?" "No, emotional archives. My people, we didn't store data. We stored experiences." Oscar straightened up, interest sparking in his tired eyes. "Valari, right?" She blinked. "You know that name?" He nodded slowly. "Heard stories. Traders said you were wiped out. Said the Valari were dangerous." She looked away, jaw tightening. Dangerous because we remembered what others wanted to forget. Silence settled between them. Then Oscar said, almost cautiously, "So how did you survive?" Sir's fingers twitched slightly on her knees. "I was taken young. Before the fires. Before the glass fell on the temples. A slaver's ship hit one of our lesser moons. I was supposed to carry a diplomat's memory. We transferred them at ceremonies, but they took me instead. They thought I was some kind of empathic asset." Oscar swallowed, looking down at the floor. "And after that? Storage. Silence. Drugs. They kept me on sedation for years. Said I kept triggering the others." He didn't speak. He didn't have to. And for the first time, she asked him something. "What about you? Why are you here, alone on a dust world?" Oscar gave a short, humorless laugh. "Long story." "I want to hear it," she said gently. He rubbed the back of his neck. "Used to work out on the Terran Rim. Repairs mostly. Combat salvage. I was stationed on Novos Prime during the Reclaimer uprisings." He paused, and when he continued, his voice was quieter. "There was a girl, my sister, Mara. She was in the safe zone, or supposed to be. A militia group mistook her for a tech smuggler. Shot her before I could get to her. I saw her fall from across a plaza. Too far to do anything." Sir's gaze was steady. "Solemn. I'm sorry." "She was 16, he said. "Brightest damn thing I'd ever known. After that, I couldn't stay. Left the unit. Took every off-world job I could. Eventually found this place. Dead enough that no one asked questions." They sat in silence for a long moment. Shared pain is a strange thing. It doesn't ease your own, but it reshapes it. Makes it less sharp. Less alone. Finally, Oscar stood up, stretching. "You hungry?" Sir nodded faintly. They shared a simple meal. Root stew, stale bread, water with a slice of something sour. It was quiet, comfortable. Later, as night fell and wind rustled the vines on the outer wall, Oscar pulled an old tin box from a cabinet and set it on the table between them. "You strike me as someone who likes patterns," he said. Sir raised a brow slightly. Inside the box were dozens of tiny mechanical parts. Old drive chips, broken watch gears, magnets, copper thread. He gave her a shrug. "Call it a puzzle. Helps pass the time." Without a word, Sir reached in and began arranging the pieces, connecting shapes, stacking weights, twisting bits until they aligned into a small kinetic sculpture. The motion was fluid, natural, like she was remembering something her hands knew better than her mind. Oscar watched, smiling to himself. "You were a builder too, huh?" "No, we built with meaning." She turned the sculpture gently. It ticked once, then spun. Every object held a memory, a story. Oscar picked up a gear and turned it over. "And if you didn't want to remember?" She paused and said, "Then we held it for you." He looked at her like he was seeing something new. Not just a survivor, not just a mystery, but someone whole, even in pieces. When she finally returned to her room that night, she found a clean datapad resting on the bed. Not a command, not an expectation, just a blank space, a place to write or remember. And that night, Sura did something she hadn't done in years. She dreamed, not of cages, not of shadows or screaming stars, but of a fire-lit room, a shared silence, and two broken people, trying, slowly, quietly, to build something. Beneath the surface, the sun had already slipped below the cliffs, painting the sky in bruised purples and fading gold. Oscar hadn't said much all afternoon, but that wasn't unusual. Some silences between them had begun to feel less like distance and more like shared space. But tonight something was different. He returned from his usual walk later than usual, boots dusted in red soil, and a strange softness in his expression. Without a word, he stepped into the workshop and held something out to her, a flower. It was small and imperfect, violet petals curling at the edges, silver threads of bioluminescence glowing faintly from the center. Fragile but undeniably beautiful. "I found it near the ridge," he said. "Thought it looked like you. The way it catches light when no one's looking." Sir stared at it, not moving, not blinking, just stunned. "For me?" she asked. Oscar gave a small nod. "Yeah." She reached out slowly, as if expecting it to vanish the moment her skin touched it. Her fingers brushed the stem, warm, alive. The glow shifted to match her own. No one had ever given her a gift before. Not freely. Not just because. "This is mine," she whispered. "Only if you want it," Oscar said. She clutched the flower to her chest. Her throat tightened. Heat welled behind her eyes, sharp and sudden. She shook her head slightly, as if confused by her own reaction. "No one ever gave me anything," she murmured, not without wanting something back. Oscar didn't answer. He didn't need to. The tears came without warning. She sank onto the bench beside the console, covering her face with her hands as her shoulders began to shake. It wasn't a loud, gasping kind of grief. It was a kind that had waited for too long, quietly piling up in corners of the soul until it had nowhere else to go. Oscar didn't speak. He didn't try to stop her. He just sat near, close enough to feel, but far enough to let her feel alone. When she looked up, her face was streaked with tears, and the flower still rested in her hand. Her gaze locked with his, and in that moment, she crossed a line she didn't even know she'd drawn. She moved him slowly, deliberately, placing one hand on his shoulder, then brushing the other against his jaw. His breath caught, but he didn't flinch. "I want to know what it would feel like," she whispered. And then she kissed him, soft, uncertain, trembling, but real. Oscar didn't move at first. Then his hand gently touched her waist, not pulling, just anchoring. When their lips parted, their foreheads rested together, breathing in the same space. Sir's voice trembled. "I don't know why I did that." Oscar smiled faintly. "I think I do." She exhaled, shaky but lighter. "Thank you for the flower." "You can keep it," he said, "no matter what happens." That stillness might have lasted all night, if not for the soft click of a perimeter alert, flashing red near the front hatch. Oscar stood instantly. Oscar was up before she even moved, scanning the soul on the wall with practiced urgency. Perimeter breach, no ID tags, 5 life forms coming in fast. Sir's blood turned cold. Scouts. Oscar shook his head. "No too many. This is a retrieval team." She was already moving bare feet across cold floor, pulling on her boots, wrapping the light jacket. She'd taken a wearing, not a habit, out of choice or choice. They didn't speak for a moment as the tension in the air thickened, then Oscar looked at her rifle slung. Across his back, a pulse grenade in his hand. "This is your chance to go. I'll cover the front. You take the trail through the ridge. And don't stop until you reach the comm tower. There's a pilot there, Xena. She owes me no Surus." Said her voice sharp. He blinked. "I'm not running." "Without you," Oscar stepped forward, his frustration barely held in check. "I'm not asking for a debate. Sura, I brought this on you. Let me." She grabbed his wrist. No, her eyes burned not with fear, but with resolve. "You didn't bring this on. Me, I chose to stay. I chose you. And if they want to take me, they'll have to tear us apart for a beat." The world seemed to go still. Oscar exhaled through his nose. The fight left his posture, and in its place came something heavier, understanding. "Then we hold them off together." He said they fortified the house as fast as they could. Oscar laid traps at the back entrance. Sura rewired the drone jammer to send out decoy signals. She didn't hesitate. She didn't ask. How her fingers moved with precision mind. Clear the trauma that had once paralyzed her now moved through her. Like fuel, the sun rose, casting orange light through the haze of silence. Before the storm, then came the sound boots on dirt. 5 of them armed efficient Oscar stood at the window with his rifle eyes narrowed. They're not authority. He muttered Surah, looked up what their mercs contracted, no insignia, which means they don't care about protocols. They're here to extract dead. Or alive. He looked at her. Then voice low, they don't know. What you are not really, they just want to turn you in and get paid. Surah stepped forward to flower. He'd given her still woven into the laces of her wristband. Then they'll see what a Valari is capable. He raised an eyebrow. What are you capable of? Her eyes shimmered faintly as her skin lit, with bioluminescent lines stronger. Now controlled. I remember pain, she said, but I also remember every kindness, every injustice, every face that. Turned away, and I'm done hiding from all of it. Oscar couldn't help it. He smiled. Remind me never to piss you off. Then the first blast hit the door. The sound shattered the silence. Oscar fired the first shot, a warning. The mercs responded with precision, breaching from his side. With a concussive charge smoke filled the entryways, her ducked behind the workbench, tossing the signal jammer into the hallway. It exploded in a flash of white noise, sending 2 of them stumbling. Oscar dropped one with a clean pulse to the shoulder. Sir charged another, striking with a metal rod she'd sharpened days ago without telling him she wasn't a soldier. But she wasn't helpless either, and in that chaos, smoke, shouting fire, something inside her awakened. She didn't fight like a warrior. She moved like a memory, slipping through their reach, always one step ahead. Her empathy wasn't a weakness. It let her anticipate, feel their aggression, turn it against them. Then someone grabbed Oscar from behind the third merc. A brood in black armor slammed him into the console, sending spars flying. Sir saw red. She screamed, not a sound of fear, but fury, and launched herself at the attacker, landing a blow that cracked his visor. Then Oscar twisted free, kicked the man back, and fired again. 3 down. The last 2 hesitated. One raised a communicator. Oscar shot out his hand. The standoff hung in the air, and then they fled. They ran, leaving smoke, silence, and scorched earth behind. Oscar leaned against the wall, breathing hard, blooded, his temple eyes wild. You okay? He asked, voice hoarse. Sir nodded. Panting, her lip was split, her arm bruised. But she was standing. I'm fine. Then she walked over to him, cute his face, and kissed him. This time it wasn't hesitant. It wasn't testing the waters. It was fire and survival. And everything they hadn't been allowed to say when they broke apart. She whispered, I'm not property. I'm not cargo. And I am not afraid of who I am anymore. Oscar touched her forehead. Then, let's make sure no one forgets that they stood there in the middle of a half-destroyed house, side by side, and when the next drone flew overhead scanning the ruins, it didn't register surrender, it registered freedom, because Sir and Oscar weren't just surviving anymore. They were fighting for the right to live on their own terms together. They didn't wait for the second wave. By sunrise, the fires in the hills were still smoldering, and a scent of scorched metal clung to the air. The mercenaries had been just a preview. Oscar knew that the next group would be bigger, better equipped, and less inclined to leave survivors, so they ran, or rather they left with purpose. The old desert runner Oscar, kept buried under the shed, sparked to life. After just 2 tries, a miracle given its rusted panels and age, he tossed her a bag of supplies. She caught midair, no longer hesitating, no longer wondering. If she had the right, they rode fast and quiet across the ridge. Engines low, systems scrambled by the time the sun was at its peak. The city walls came into view, tall and grim, surrounded by landing pads and watchtowers. No one walked in the open here. This was a transit hub, not a home, a place where people came to disappear or pay for the privilege of pretending they didn't exist. Surah kept her hood up, head low, eyes sharp. Oscar walked beside her like someone who belonged, dusty jacket, confidence, stride the calm of a man. With nothing left to lose, they passed a checkpoint without issue. Oscar flashed an outdated but convincing ID, and the guard barely looked. Twice Sir's heart pounded the whole way through, but no alarm sounded not. Yet Zay's workshop sat in the shadow of a half-collapsed comm tower, hidden in plain sight. The sign above the hangar blinked in 6 different languages. And no questions, no refunds. A woman herself was leaning under the belly of a compact cargo hauler, her legs sticking out, and a plasma torch sparking like fireworks. She didn't move when Oscar called her name. Xena. From under the ship came a voice laced with smoke and sarcasm. If that's a debt collector, tell them I'm dead as me. Zia goggles pushed up on her forehead, revealing a face aged by solar-burned cigarette scars and too many bad deals. When she saw Oscar, her expression softened just a little. Damn, I thought you have drunk yourself into a crater by now. Almost did. Then her eyes landed on Surah. They narrowed, assessing this. Her Oscar nodded. Xena exhaled. All right, how bad? Trade authority. Contracted bounty MKs. Already made a move. Xena whistle low. You really know how to pick him. She didn't pick this, sir. STE forward. I need to get off WHL. Zaya raised a brow. You both do now. Oscar glanced at Sura. She nodded once Xena rubbed her face, muttered a string of curses in at least 3 languages, and gestured to holler, I've got a short-range jump set for Nero, okay? 5, it's out of authority. Reach from there, you're on your own. You've got an hour before my window closes. They work fast. Oscar helped load fuel cells, while Xena calibrated the NAV system. Sura rewired the security. Protocols to bypass authority, beacons, it felt coordinated like. They'd done this before like they could do this. As the ship began its final startup sequence, Xena pulled Oscar aside. You sure about this? She asked quietly. You're burning. Every bridge you had left, you disappear with her. And you don't come back. Oscar didn't hesitate. And I don't need to come back. Xena stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head with a dry laugh. You know, I still remember that day for years ago. I was cornered by Trade Patrol. Outside Theobelt had 2 crates of illegal. Sensory tech in my hold, no transponder, no permit. They were going to impound the ship, or throw me out an airlock to save on paperwork. Oscar's brow furrowed slightly, his voice low. You never told me what happened. After Xena shrugged, didn't need to. You already saved my ass, some no-name mechanic with clearance codes. You weren't supposed to have. You could have turned me and walked away clean. But instead you wiped my ID, scrambled 3 satellites, and told me what was it. She smirked, her voice turning almost saw fly like you matter. Oscar looked down the memory, flickering across his face. You gave me freedom that day. She said, didn't even know my name. She glanced at the ship, where Sura was wrapping into the co-pilot seat, the faint blue glow of her skin reflecting off the glass. And now you're doing it again, just for someone else this time. Oscar met her eyes. She's not someone else. She's everything. Xena held his gaze for a moment longer, then she smiled, lopsided and a little sad. Then you better make sure you don't break or go. They boarded just as the warning klaxons started echoing across the city. Authority patrols too late to stop them, but close enough to make escape a gamble. Oscar threw himself into the co-pilot seat. Sir's hands hovered over the controls, waiting. He looked at her. You ready? She smiled, small but real. I'm not afraid anymore. The ship launched. Engine screamed as they tore through the atmosphere, dodging beacon locks and scrambling signals. Sir's fingers danced over the NAV pad, sharp and confident. Oscar handled the defense grid. Zaya, the ship shuddered under pressure, but held steady, and then they jumped. One blink, one breath gone into black. The stars were different out here, colder, sharper, but also clearer, like someone had wiped the sky clean. They didn't speak for a long time. Then Oscar leaned back, exhaled, and let his head fall against the wall. Well, he muttered that was a hell of a way to say goodbye. Sir looked at him, her expression unreadable. It wasn't bye. She said. He glanced at her. She was holding the flower again, somehow in all the chaos. She protected it, pressed between pages of the book he'd given her. It was been a little crushed, but still glowing softly. She met his eyes. It was the first thing that was ever mine. I want you to know I chose this. I chose you. Oscar blinked slowly, as if her words needed time to reach every part of him. I didn't think I deserved that you didn't have to. They sat in silence, a while longer, staring out at the stars. Finally, Sura spoke again. You gave me freedom, Osar, not just from them, from everything, from a belief that I was nothing. You were never nothing. I didn't know that until you looked at me like I was something. Oscar didn't answer right away. He reached into the storage panel beside him, pulled out something small wrapped in cloth. He handed it to her. What is this? A new memory? He said to carry. If you want one. She unwrapped it. Inside was a small carve. Pendant, rough, hand-shaped. It was etched with A. Symbol she recognized from Valari ritual markings, her people's symbol for rebirth. Her hands trembled. She looked at him, blinking hard. I thought you didn't believe in symbols. I don't, Oscar said, but I believe in you. And that was everything. They arrived on Nero K5 a day. Later, a small moon, quiet, remote, no authorities, no records, no questions. They didn't stay hidden. They lived. They built a little home near the cliffside where wild windflowers grew in the cracks between stones. Sir taught the children of the village how to recognize emotional resonance in plants and stones. Oscar fixed broken generators, patched ships, and once a week played cards at the market. And always lost, and on their roof under alien stars they kissed like they were still running, but now toward something, toward each other. It was one of those mornings that came softly, the kind where the air was just cool enough to carry the scent of distant blossoms, and the breeze moved like it didn't want to disturb the peace. The sky above Nero K5 was washed in pale gold clouds hanging like scattered memories across the cliffs. Oscar stood in the garden boots, half-laced, a spade in one hand, forgotten. He was staring at the house, not because something was wrong, but because something was right. Sir stepped outside a few minutes ago, barefoot in the warm dirt, the edges of her robe catching in the wind. She wasn't glowing, at least not in the usual way, not from her bioluminescent skin or faint light trails on her collarbone. No, this was different. She was beaming. He could feel it before she spoke. She looked at him from across the garden, her hands folded just below her stomach. Her smile was quiet, knowing a little afraid, but mostly hopeful. He dropped the spade, without thinking, crossed the space between them in 4 long steps. She didn't say the word. She didn't have to ask her, looked at her eyes wide, already welling with the kind of emotion he didn't usually. "Let's surface, you're sure?" he asked, barely able to get. The words out her nodded, a small laugh escaping her. "I checked 3 times the scans. They're clear." He reached out as if she were made of light, resting his hand against her stomach. No bump yet, no sign of change. But he felt at the future of life they had created something that never should have been possible according to the science, according to the genetics, according to the past. And yet here they were alive together and expecting. Surah looked up at him with misty eyes. "I didn't think I mean after everything I wasn't supposed to be able." He kissed her before she could finish. It wasn't a heated kiss, not desperate or frantic like those early ones back when they were still learning how to be safe in each other's orbit. No, this one was full of silence, of awe, of gratitude. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers, hand still on her belly. "A kid." He whispered, "We're going to have a kid." Sir nodded again, and now she was crying too. Good, kind of kind, that meant something had been. Healed, even if the scar were still there. They're still like that for a while in the breeze and the golden morning. 2 people who'd spent most of their lives in shadows, finally learning how to live in the light later. That day, Sir sat by the cliffside with a blank page, and the carved pen Oscar had given her. She traced the Valari symbol for rebirth onto the page, then beneath it, another glyph, the ancient word for hope. When she finished, she looked out at the valley where wind flowers danced in the sun and smiled. The past would always be a part of them, but now the future had a heartbeat.